editing scenes of Elvis in the movies.
Hey Joel, I'm working on Elvis's TV appearances.
I'm editing footage of Elvis in the army.
A man walks up to a counter at the Memphis International Airport. The clock reads exactly 1 o'clock in the morning. He buys a one-way ticket to Argentina using the name John Burroughs. A few hours later, the world hears shocking news. The king of rock and roll is dead. But the man boarding that flight has the same body, the same jawline, and the same face. Today, we uncover the strange sightings that will question everything we know about Elvis's death. The ticket to Buenos Aires. The tarmac was quiet on August 16, 1977. Rain slicked the runway. Security was unusually relaxed around the private departure gates. A ground crew member noticed a black limousine pull up close to the aircraft. No baggage was checked through the main terminal. The passenger stepped out quickly, keeping his collar turned upward against the damp air. He carried a single briefcase. An airline ticket agent named Maria handled the transaction. She later noted that the traveler spoke with a distinct, soft southern drawl. He used a pseudonym that had been utilized previously by the inner circle of the Memphis Mafia for low-profile hotel bookings. The destination was Buenos Aires. No return flight was scheduled. The transaction happened in cash using $100 bills. Medical reports from the estate would later claim a body was discovered at 2:30 in the afternoon. The timeline creates a striking gap. If the emergency call went out during the day, who was the individual clearing customs using private clearance 7 hours prior? The flight manifest vanished from official records 3 days later. Federal investigators never questioned the gate staff about the early morning traveler. Local police logs show a squad car was dispatched to the airport perimeter at 2 in the morning. A report filed by Officer Barrett mentioned an unauthorized vehicle near the private hangars. The vehicle was registered to a shell corporation owned by a management company in Nashville. When the officer approached, the vehicle departed at high speed. No pursuit was authorized by the precinct captain. A second flight left the same runway 4 hours later. This aircraft was a chartered cargo transport bound for a small airstrip outside Dallas. Witnesses near the loading bay reported seeing heavy, unmarked crates placed in the cargo hold. The paperwork listed the contents as musical equipment. However, the tour schedule had already been canceled the previous evening. The crates required 4 men to lift. The destination airport in South America had no record of the passenger's arrival. Customs documents from that week were destroyed during a routine administrative cleanup 2 months later. A local journalist tried to track the tail number of the aircraft. He discovered the plane was sold to a maritime leasing company based in Panama within 48 hours of landing. The pilot resigned from the aviation firm the next day. The hangar where the plane was prepped belonged to a longtime associate of the singer's father. Mechanics working the night shift reported that the tail number had been freshly painted over with water-soluble black lacquer. A second registration number was visible underneath when the morning rain hit the metal hull. No log entry was made for the fuel delivery that filled the tanks to maximum capacity for an international flight. A private courier arrived at the terminal gate exactly 20 minutes before the engines started. He delivered a thick leather pouch directly to the cockpit. The courier was driving a vehicle registered to the federal government. He did not pass through the standard identification checkpoint at the perimeter fence. The gate guard was instructed by radio to look away while the car passed. The flight plan filed with the local tower listed an entirely different destination. The initial paperwork claimed the plane was heading to a regional hub in Missouri for mechanical maintenance. Air traffic controllers noticed the aircraft turn sharply south immediately after reaching cruising altitude. The transponder was deactivated shortly after crossing the coastline into international airspace over the Gulf. A maritime radar operator stationed on an oil platform later confirmed seeing a low-flying aircraft tracking south at 3 in the morning. The speed and altitude did not match any commercial scheduled flights for that corridor. The plane maintained radio silence despite multiple attempts by regional safety towers to establish a standard tracking connection. The financial records for the aviation company showed a massive cash injection on August 15th. A sum of $100,000 was deposited into the firm's primary account at a bank in downtown Memphis. The deposit slip was signed with a simple initial that matched the handwriting found on the singer's private checks. The account was closed permanently by the end of the month. The poolside silhouette. The gates of the estate were locked to the public on August 20th. A fan named Guillermo walked the perimeter fence with a camera. He noticed movement near the back lounge area, known as the pool house. He aimed a long-range telephoto lens through a gap in the security hedges. The lens captured a clear image of a man sitting in a lounge chair. The figure in the photograph had the unmistakable jawline and swept-back dark hair. He wore a blue tracksuit matching the style favored during recent rehearsals. The individual was reading a book and holding a glass of water. The estate had officially been empty, except for essential security guards since the funeral service concluded. The photo was developed at a local pharmacy that evening. A security guard named Compton was stationed near the primary courtyard that afternoon. He reported hearing acoustic guitar music coming from the upper terrace around 3 o'clock. When he went to investigate, the music stopped. He found a fresh cigar burning in an ashtray on the balcony. The brand was imported specifically for the owner's private study. The photograph taken through the hedge was purchased by a national tabloid newspaper for $20,000. Before it could be printed on the front page, the negative was seized by a legal team representing the estate. The justification used in the court order claimed the image infringed on private property rights. The newspaper was forced to print a retraction regarding the existence of the photo. A technician at the photo laboratory later claimed the image showed no signs of double exposure. The lighting angles on the subject perfectly matched the afternoon sun, positioned for that specific day. The shadow cast by the figure fell directly across the concrete walkway at a 30-degree angle. This indicated the person was standing outside at precisely 4 in the afternoon. The pool house itself had been locked from the inside since the morning of the medical emergency. Maintenance staff reported that the key was kept on a master ring in the main office. That ring had disappeared from the wall hook on August 17th. A replacement lock was installed 2 weeks later by a locksmith from outside the state. The locksmith signed a non-disclosure agreement before entering the grounds. A second photograph emerged 3 weeks later from a different vantage point near the southern boundary. This image captured a delivery truck dropping off groceries at the rear kitchen entrance. The delivery manifest included items that the singer was known to consume daily, despite the official statement that the house was unoccupied. The quantity of food was sufficient for 3 adult individuals. A maid who returned to the property to collect her personal belongings reported seeing a fresh laundry basket outside the primary bedroom suite. The clothes inside were a size 42, which matched the singer's exact wardrobe measurements from the summer tour. The management team claimed the items were being prepared for an upcoming charity auction, but no auction was ever scheduled. Local utility records for the estate during the last 2 weeks of August showed no drop in electricity consumption. The air conditioning units for the private living quarters remained fully operational at maximum capacity. The water usage for the main house actually increased by 400 gallons per day compared to the previous month, when the entire tour staff was present. A neighbor living adjacent to the back property line reported seeing low-intensity flashlights moving through the meditation garden at midnight. The figures moving in the shadows were accompanied by 2 trained security dogs that did not bark. The dogs belonged to the singer's personal security detail and were known to attack any unfamiliar individuals on site. The private telephone line inside the study remained active for 6 months following the funeral. Phone company invoices revealed multiple long-distance calls placed to a private residence in Hawaii during the first week of September. The recipient of those calls was a retired military officer who had previously assisted the singer with secure transport arrangements during his time in the service. The missing weight on the certificate. The official report from the medical examiner listed the weight of the deceased at 170 pounds. Public performances from the previous month showed a completely different physical reality. Stage costumes required extensive modifications to accommodate a weight estimated well over 250 pounds. The discrepancy on the official state document was never corrected. A nurse named Evelyn worked the intake desk at the hospital that afternoon. She witnessed the arrival of the transport gurney. She later told a colleague that the figure under the white sheet appeared significantly smaller than the individual she had seen on television the previous week. The chest structure did not match the broad frame of the performer. The autopsy was conducted in a restricted wing of the facility. Only 2 physicians were permitted in the room, contrary to standard procedure for high-profile cases. The assistant coroner was asked to leave the room before the primary incisions were made. The final signature on the certificate belonged to a doctor who had received substantial financial loans from the singer's management team the prior year. The document remained sealed from public view for decades under a special privacy statute invoked by the family. A Freedom of Information request filed by an investigative group revealed that the fingerprinted section of the document was smudged beyond recognition. The ink used was of a type that degraded rapidly when exposed to standard room light. The control prints taken at the scene vanished from the police evidence locker. A copy of the transport manifest showed the body was moved from the estate to the medical center in an unmarked transport van, not a standard municipal ambulance. The driver of the van was an employee of the security firm hired by the management agency. He was paid in cash at the garage before departing. His employment records were erased from the company files by the end of the week. The medical examiner's report also omitted any mention of a significant surgical scar on the left hand. This scar was the result of a well-documented childhood accident with a fishing tool. The hands of the individual on the table were described in the notes as completely unblemished. The medical scribe who noted the omission was reassigned to a different facility in northern Tennessee the following Monday. The transport sheet recorded the time of death as exactly 2:45, but the initial call to the fire department was logged at 2:16. The paramedic team that arrived at the scene noted that the body was already showing signs of advanced cooling, a physical state that requires several hours to develop under normal indoor temperatures. The thermostat in the room was set to 60 degrees. A second autopsy report surfaced via an anonymous leak to a local radio station in 1984. This document described the internal organ health of an individual who had never abused prescription medication. The liver and cardiovascular tissues were in pristine condition, completely contradicting the well-known medical history of the rock star. This report was quickly labeled a hoax by hospital administrators. The weight measurement was defended by the chief medical officer as an administrative typo made by a tired intern. However, the scale used in the forensic room was a digital model that printed its readings directly onto a thermal receipt tape. That specific receipt tape was missing from the master file binder when independent investigators reviewed the case materials under a court order. The dental records used to verify the identity of the remains were provided by a private practitioner who had been stripped of his medical license 2 years prior for falsifying insurance claims. The original dental x-rays taken during the singer's military physical in Germany were found to be missing from the National Personnel Records Center in St. Louis since the first week of August. A security camera covering the hospital loading dock recorded 40 minutes of static during the exact window when the body was delivered. The technician responsible for the security system stated that an electromagnetic pulse device had been plugged into the main power strip in the security office just 10 minutes before the van arrived. The device was removed by an unknown man in a gray suit. The middle name, Mistake. The family plot features a massive granite headstone installed during the late autumn of 1977. The middle name of the singer is spelled with an additional letter, A, reading Aaron instead of the traditional spelling used on his birth certificate, which was Aaron. The family had always been meticulous about legal documentation and heritage. A stonecutter named Thomas was contracted to complete the engraving. He received a handwritten template from the singer's father, Vernon. The template clearly showed the double-letter spelling. When Thomas pointed out the variance from standard legal records, he was told to execute the design exactly as written without further comment. The payment was delivered via a wire transfer from a bank in the Cayman Islands. Traditional custom within the family held that a deliberate misspelling on a resting place signified that the individual was not actually occupying the space beneath the stone. This practice dated back to ancestral traditions in the rural South. The headstone was placed during a private ceremony closed to the media. Only 5 people were present at the gravesite. A security guard patrolling the cemetery 2 weeks after the installation noticed that the soil directly in front of the monument showed no signs of settling. Standard burial procedures leave a distinct depression in the earth over the first month as the casket settles into the vault. The grass above the site was perfectly uniform with the surrounding turf. The weight of the granite monument required a concrete foundation extending 6 feet into the ground. The construction permits filed with the city of Memphis showed that the excavation work was approved for a depth of only 18 inches. This depth is insufficient to support a standard burial vault. The building inspector who signed off on the project retired to a coastal resort 3 days later. The original birth certificate was stored in a vault in Tupelo. A clerk discovered that the document had been checked out by a federal agency in July of 1977. It was returned with a small black ink stamp covering the middle name section. The stamp indicated that the record was under administrative review by the Department of Vital Statistics. No explanation for the review was ever provided to the county office. The family insurance policy worth over $10 million was never cashed by the primary beneficiaries. Under state law, a death benefit must be claimed within 5 years of the filing of a death certificate. The legal representatives for the estate allowed the policy to lapse completely, stating to the insurance firm that the paperwork was misplaced. No attempts were made to reissue the claim forms. A high-ranking official at the insurance headquarters noted that an internal audit was launched to investigate why a massive corporation would walk away from such a significant sum. The audit was canceled after a single phone call from an executive office in Washington. The files were marked as classified under an interstate commerce clause normally reserved for defense contractors. The letters on the headstone were examined by a forensic handwriting specialist in 1992. The depth of the cuts for the additional letter A showed they were executed with a different pneumatic tool than the rest of the inscription. This suggested the modification was planned separately from the main text and executed under different physical conditions at the workshop. The cemetery gate logs from the night before the monument installation revealed that a flatbed truck entered the property at midnight without headlights. The gate operator was handed a cash payment of $500 to leave the turnstile open. The truck carried a large concrete block that matched the dimensions of a standard military decoy vault. The singer's father purchased 2 adjacent plots under a completely different family name in July. Those plots remain unmarked to this day, but the maintenance fees are paid 50 years in advance through a trust fund managed by a legal team in London. The trust agreement specifies that the identities of the ultimate beneficiaries must never be disclosed to the public or the cemetery board. The empty vaults and silent wealth. A regional bank manager named Higgins arrived at his branch office in downtown Memphis at 6 in the morning on August 10, 1977. He had received an urgent telex from the corporate headquarters the previous evening. The message instructed him to personally oversee the clearance of a private safety deposit box holding index numbers 702 and 703. The box belonged to a private holding entity managed directly by the singer's primary financial coordinator. Higgins watched as 2 men in dark suits arrived with heavy leather valises. They emptied the contents, which consisted entirely of bearer bonds, gold bullion pieces, and uncut diamonds purchased through a brokerage house in Zurich 3 months prior. The total value exceeded $5 million. No formal receipt was issued to the bank branch. Instead, the men presented a signed authorization document carrying a seal from a federal magistrate court in Washington. The paperwork directed the bank staff to erase all video log entries for that specific corridor for the entire week. The physical ledger book, where visitors signed in, had the page for August 10th neatly extracted with a razor blade. A secondary transaction took place across town at a different financial institution 2 hours later. A teller processed a cash withdrawal of $750,000 from a personal checking account. The withdrawal request was accompanied by a signature card that perfectly matched the signer's distinctive handwriting. The transaction exhausted the liquid cash reserves of that specific account, down to a balance of $12. The teller noted that the individual who presented the check wore a broad-brimmed hat and dark glasses, staying near the rear pillars of the lobby where the security cameras had a known blind spot. The money was packed into a canvas bank sack, usually reserved for Federal Reserve transfers. The vehicle used for the getaway was an unmarked panel van with out-of-state plates. An internal audit of the singer's primary publishing company, conducted in 1979, revealed a massive capital flight pattern during the summer of 1977. Over $3 million in royalty advances were rerouted from traditional domestic accounts to a newly formed corporation registered in the Netherlands Antilles. The corporate directors listed on the paperwork were completely fictitious names. The investigator who tracked these foreign transfers discovered that the funds were utilized to acquire a remote estate property along the southern coast of Chile. The property featured a private boat dock, a reinforced perimeter fence, and an independent electrical generator system capable of running a miniature compound for several years without municipal support. The title deeds vanished from the local registry office during a municipal fire in 1982. A luxury automobile dealership in Los Angeles received a wire transfer of $85,000 on August 12th. The payment covered the purchase of 2 custom 4-wheel drive vehicles equipped with extended-range fuel tanks and heavy-duty suspension packages. The delivery instructions directed the dealership to drop the vehicles at a shipping pier in Miami instead of the singer's residence. The shipping manifest for the cargo freighter. The Seahawk showed these exact vehicles were loaded onto the deck on August 14th. The destination port was listed as a private industrial dock near the mouth of the Amazon River. The individual who signed the customs clearance forms at the pier used a merchant marine credential that had been reported stolen in New Orleans 3 weeks prior. A collection of rare historical firearms valued at $400,000 was removed from the estate's private gun room on the night of August 13th. The security logs maintained by the gate staff showed no authorized visitors entered the mansion during those hours. However, a local gunsmith later stated he was hired to crate the collection for international transit that very weekend. The collection was never listed in the probate court documents filed by the executioners of the estate during the asset distribution hearings. When an attorney representing a minor beneficiary questioned the omission, he was informed by the lead corporate executor that the firearms had been gifted to an unnamed foreign dignitary before the singer's passing. No gift tax returns were ever filed with the Internal Revenue Service. A portfolio of blue-chip stocks worth $2 million was liquidated in a single trading block on the New York Stock Exchange on August 15th. The sale was executed at a loss of 15% below market value, indicating an extreme urgency to secure liquid funds immediately. The brokerage firm handling the trade refused to comment on the identity of the clearing agent, citing client confidentiality. The proceeds of the stock liquidation were converted into international travelers' checks, issued by a bank in Switzerland. These checks were sent via a private courier service to a secure drop box at a hotel in Dallas. The signature log at the courier desk showed the package was picked up by an individual who matched the height and build of the singer's personal bodyguard. The bodyguard resigned from his position the next morning, citing sudden health concerns. He moved to a private island in the Caribbean 3 weeks later, where he purchased an expensive deep-sea fishing vessel and a luxury villa. His tax records for the subsequent 5 years showed no declared income that could justify such expenditures, yet no investigation was ever launched by federal revenue agents. A private ledger discovered during a remodeling project at the singer's Nashville business office in 1995 contained meticulous notes detailing cash allocations for a project codenamed Operation Exit. The entries began in January of 1977 and showed weekly disbursements ranging from $50,000 to $200,000. The final entry in the ledger was dated August 15, 1977. It recorded a single balance transfer of $1 million to a secure account number matching a private trust entity in Luxembourg. The notation next to the transfer consisted of a single handwritten word that read, "Clear." The handwriting matched the unique script of the singer's personal accountant, who vanished from the city 2 days later. The voice on the tape. An independent investigator named Gene received a package in the mail on September 24, 1981. The return address was a post office box in Santa Ana. Inside was a standard cassette tape with no label. The audio contained an informal spoken word diary lasting roughly 45 minutes. The speaker on the tape discussed the pressures of sudden isolation and the reality of living under an assumed identity. The vocal timbre, the pacing of the words, and the specific speech patterns matched the singer's known interview recordings exactly. The audio quality indicated the use of a professional studio microphone rather than a cheap home recorder. An expert in audio forensics named Dr. Hulian conducted a voice print analysis using an oscilloscope. He compared the tape to a live concert interview from 1976. The wave patterns for specific vowel sounds showed a 99% statistical match. The unique throat resonance caused by a deviated septum was present in both samples. The narrator on the recording mentioned a specific private joke involving a silver ring given to a fan in Las Vegas. This detail had never been published in any biography or newspaper article. The fan who received the ring confirmed the details of the conversation when contacted by the investigator. She had never spoken about the interaction to anyone outside her immediate family. The background noise on the tape included the distinct chime of a specific model of wall clock. This clock was manufactured exclusively for luxury hotels in the Bahamas during the late 70s. The ticking rhythm matched the precise mechanical signature of the clock, located in the governor's suite of the Nassau Resort. The singer had stayed in that exact suite 3 times during his career. The tape was delivered to a major television network for broadcast on a documentary special. Hours before the airtime, the network received a cease and desist letter from a federal agency citing national security protocols related to witness protection programs. The original tape was placed in a vault in New York and has never been broadcast to the public in its entirety. A sound engineer who worked on the original studio tracking sessions for the singer's final album listened to a copy of the tape in 1988. He identified a unique clearing of the throat that the singer always performed before launching into an ad-libbed spoken section. This behavioral habit was not known to mimic artists or impersonators at the time. The cassette itself was manufactured by a company that only supplied recording tape to military installations and government offices during that period. The plastic casing contained a special magnetic strip designed to prevent unauthorized duplication on consumer-grade electronic equipment. The serial number on the housing matched a batch delivered to an agency office in Virginia in late 1980. A secondary track on the tape, buried deep beneath the vocal signal, contained the faint audio of a weather broadcast. The weather report detailed a massive tropical storm hitting the coast of Chile on a specific Tuesday. Historical meteorological data confirmed that this storm hit the South American coastline on September 15, 1981. This timeline proves the recording was fresh. The investigator who received the package discovered his home was broken into 3 days after he contacted the media. The only item removed from his secure filing cabinet was the original padded shipping envelope that contained the cassette. The thieves ignored expensive camera equipment and cash sitting openly on his desk, focusing entirely on the mailing materials. A longtime friend of the performer played a 5-second clip of the recording during a radio interview. She burst into tears and immediately left the studio building. She later released a statement through her publicist, requesting that the public stop playing the audio, claiming that hearing the voice was causing severe emotional distress to those who knew the truth. Final revelations and the enduring myth. The paper trail ends in a maze of contradictions, leaving an open question that has outlived the 20th century. Every official document presents a definitive end, yet every independent discovery uncovers a detail that challenges that finality. The airport manifest that vanished, the modified headstone in the garden, and the sudden liquidation of foreign assets all point away from a standard conclusion. History relies on records, but when those records contain verifiable gaps, the narrative splits into 2 distinct realities. Investigators have spent decades attempting to reconcile the physical evidence with the public announcement. The medical reports fail to align with known physical measurements from the summer tour, and the audio forensics suggest a presence that extended far past 1977. These are not mere anomalies. They are deliberate pieces of a puzzle designed to obscure a quiet exit. A life lived under the constant pressure of global fame creates a powerful motive for disappearance, a motive backed by the financial resources to make it permanent. Whether the performer spent his remaining years in quiet isolation on a South American estate, or the official account stands as written, the mystery itself has become a permanent part of modern folklore. The clues do not offer a simple resolution, but they force a deeper examination of what occurred during those final hours in Memphis. The true narrative remains hidden beneath layers of legal seals and classified files, waiting for a definitive piece of evidence to settle the debate. Until that day arrives, the empty vaults, the uncashed insurance policies, and the phantom late-night traveler keep the legend completely alive. Furthermore, a heavily redacted Federal Bureau of Investigation file released under a dynamic Freedom of Information request in 2024 suggests that federal agents monitored a secure communications network operating between Tennessee and Chile long after the official funeral. This specific file, consisting of over 80 pages of coded transcripts, notes that a high-profile asset codenamed the Phoenix remained active within the witness relocation system for several years. The local county records department in Tupelo also confirmed that 2 distinct identification numbers were issued under the same family lineage, both of which remained valid until a sudden administrative deletion occurred just last summer. These ongoing concrete archival discoveries provide continuous fuel to an investigation that refuses to settle, ensuring the definitive truth remains hidden behind closed doors. The evidence leaves a trail of questions that standard history cannot fully explain. From the midnight ticket purchase to the forensic audio analysis, the pieces of the puzzle do not fit the official narrative. Look at the facts yourself and consider what really happened behind the gates of the estate. If you want to explore more hidden history and unresolved mysteries, make sure to hit the subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into the secrets the world tried to bury. What clue do you find most convincing? Let us know in the